Before I start my story, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone for getting my last video to 288 views. It is so amazing to know I have a brand new channel and it is doing so well. Thanks to all of you. Please don't forget to subscribe. Today's story is Web of Terror, the hunt for the giant spider. As night fell over the small town, a feeling of unease spread among the residents. It was said that when the moon was full, strange things could happen. And on this particular night, something truly terrifying was about to unfold. A group of teenagers had decided to explore the abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. As they made their way through the darkened corridors, their flashlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, one of them let out a blood-curdling scream. There, in front of them, stood a giant spider. Its hairy legs were thicker than tree trunks, and its body was the size of a small car. The teens were frozen in fear, unable to move as the monstrous creature began to advance towards them. Its 8 glowing eyes fixed on the group, the spider raised its front legs and let out a deafening screech. The sound echoed through the abandoned factory, sending shivers down the spines of all who heard it. As the teens watched in horror, the spider began to weave a web around them, trapping them in its sticky embrace. They knew that they had to find a way to escape before it was too late, but with the giant spider looming over them, it seemed like there was no way out. As the giant spider continued to weave its web around the terrified teenagers, they frantically searched for a way to escape. But every route they tried was blocked by the sticky strands, which seemed to grow stronger by the minute. One of the teenagers tried to fight back, swinging a flashlight at the spider's leg, but it had no effect. The spider merely hissed in response and tightened its grip on the trapped teens. Just when all hope seemed lost, a glimmer of light appeared in the distance. It was a search party, led by a brave and experienced arachnologist who had heard rumors of a giant spider lurking in the abandoned factory. The arachnologist wasted no time in taking charge of the situation. Armed with a specialized spider repellent, he approached the monstrous creature with caution. The spider hissed and raised its legs in defense, but the arachnologist stood his ground and sprayed the repellent directly at the creature. To the teenagers' amazement, the spider began to shrink before their eyes, its legs slowly curling up as it retreated back into the shadows. The arachnologist quickly cut through the webbing with a pair of shears, freeing the trapped teens. But even as they emerged from the factory, they knew that they had not seen the last of the giant spider. They could feel its presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. The teenagers were understandably shaken by the encounter, and they recounted their terrifying experience to the arachnologist. He listened intently, nodding his head as they spoke. When they finished, he told them that he had been studying spiders for many years, but he had never seen anything like the creature they had encountered. As they walked back to town, the arachnologist explained that the giant spider was likely a new species that had never been seen before. He urged the teenagers to stay away from the abandoned factory, warning them that the spider was extremely dangerous and could pose a threat to the entire town. But despite his warnings, the teenagers couldn't shake the feeling that they needed to go back and investigate further. They began to research spiders, trying to identify the creature they had encountered. They scoured the internet and pored over books, but they could find no record of a spider like the one they had seen. Finally, they decided to return to the factory and look for more clues. As they approached, they could feel a sense of dread washing over them. The spider's presence seemed even more ominous than before. They made their way through the darkened corridors, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. Suddenly, they heard a low growling sound, like the purring of a cat. They froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. The sound grew louder and more intense, and they realized with horror that it was coming from the spider. As they turned a corner, they saw the spider once again. But this time, it was different. Its legs were longer and thinner, and its body was covered in a thick, greenish-gray fur. Its eyes glinted in the flashlight beams, and its fangs dripped with venom. The teenagers were rooted to the spot, unable to move as the spider advanced towards them. It was clear that this was not the same creature they had encountered before. This spider was even more dangerous, and it seemed to be even more intelligent. Just when it seemed like all was lost, the arachnologist burst into the room, brandishing a can of spider repellent. He aimed it at the spider and sprayed it with a burst of mist. The spider hissed and retreated, its fur bristling. As the teenagers ran from the factory, they knew that they had narrowly escaped with their lives. But they also knew that the spider was still out there, waiting for its next victim. And they knew that it was only a matter of time before they would have to face it again. Thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe or you may be the giant arachnid's next meal.